These are going to be the notes for the second part of section 8.3 trigonometry. The objectives are I will be able to find trigonometric ratios using right triangles, and I will be able to solve problems using trigonometric ratios. What we're going to do is we have this nice little procedure, 7 steps. We're going to use this. We're going to go through it and go through an example using it. So the first step is you identify or circle the acute angle that's being used. So remember, acute means less than 90. So if I look at number 1, the acute angle I have is 32 degrees. So I circle that. Step 2 tells us to label the sides opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So whenever I go down to my picture, across from the right angle is going to be my hypotenuse. So I'm going to label that H. Opposite means I go through the triangle. So this is the one that doesn't touch 32 degrees. And adjacent means next to. So the sides that touch 32 degrees are the hypotenuse and the adjacent side, which is Y. Step 3 says decide which trig function you will use to find each variable. And then it says cover up one variable to find the other variable. So let's start off by finding x. So x is opposite, and the other side I have is 24, which is the hypotenuse. So that means whenever I look at SOHCAHTOA, let me fill in this part up here for number 7. The one that has O and H is sine. So what I do is the sine of the angle, 32 degrees, is going to be equal to opposite over adjacent, which is x over 24. So I set up the equation. That was step number 4, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself. To find out step 5, we solve. We either write x out as the number times sine, cosine, or tangent, or it'll be the number over sine, cosine, or tangent. So to solve for x here, I need to multiply both sides by 24. So I'm going to have x is equal to 24 sine of 32 degrees. So step 6 says use your calculator to find your answer. So you should remember from our prior video that I need to make sure that this is on degree. So I have to hit mode. Mode is next to second. And I see that my calculator is not on degree. It's on radian. So I need to make sure degree is checked. So I go over and hit enter. I can just say clear, and all I do is hit 24. Sine is right here below the apps button. 32. And I always want to get in the habit of closing my parentheses. So I have 12.718. It goes on forever. My directions say find the missing side measures and round to 2 decimal places. So 2 decimal places would be 12.72. So x is equal to 12.72. So if there are 2 variables, we need to repeat all steps 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now if I want to solve for y, I'm going to use 24 again. So that's a and h, so that would be cosine. So cosine of 32 degrees is equal to y over 24. Solve for this, I multiply both sides by 24, so I get 24 cosine 32 degrees is equal to y. I double check to make sure. Well, my calculator is already on degrees, so I'm good. 24 cosine 32 and we round to 2 decimal places, so y is equal to 20.35. And those are my 2 answers. Let's try number 2 also. So let's follow those steps. We circle the angle. We identify hypotenuse, adjacent, and opposite. So across from the 90-degree angle, I'm not pointing to the 40 degrees, I'm pointing to y. So that's my hypotenuse. This is my opposite side, and x is adjacent. So if I want to solve for x, I'm using the opposite this time. So opposite and adjacent, that would be tangent. So tan of 40 degrees is equal to 15 over x. Here we have x in the denominator, so the really quick thing to do is just to move x in the tan of 40. That's a trick you should have learned from Algebra 1. So I'll do alpha y equals enter. I'll get my fraction, 15 over the tan of 40. And I'm rounding to 2 decimal points, so it's 17.88. If I want to solve for y, use blue. I'm also going to use 15, so that's opposite and hypotenuse. So that would be sine. So the sine of 40 degrees is equal to 15 over y. Again, I have y in the denominator, so my shortcut is just change places. Get the calculator out. Alpha y equals enter. 15 over sine of 40. 23.34. I would like you to try number 3 on your own, but to do so, you need a graphing or scientific calculator. So try number 3. In the description, I will give you a link to find a calculator that can find sine, cosine, and tangent online. Let's take a look at the second page. Here's the steps, so let's go through it again. This time we want to find the missing angle. So let's figure this out. So number 1, we circle one of the unknown angles. Let's figure out what angle A is. We label the sides according to the circled angle, so that means we need to do opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So I know that across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse, across from my angle is opposite, and the last one's adjacent. Determine which trig function you should use. Well, I have the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so that means I'm going to use cosine. Set up an equation using the appropriate trig function. So since I'm using cosine, it's going to be cosine of A. Remember, the angle always goes next to sine, cosine, or tangent. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so it's 24 over 25. Use an inverse trig function. So to get rid of cosine, I just use cosine -1, 24 over 25. Also known as the inverse cosine or the arc cosine. So let's figure it out. We have to use our calculator now. So the cosine -1, we have to hit second first. So second, and then it's cosine. And we just type our fraction, and you can do alpha y equals enter if you want. It's 24 over 25. So for this problem, we're told to round answers to 2 decimal places. So that's going to be 16.26. and these are degrees. So step 6, once you already know one of the acute angles, we just figured out angle A. Use the fact that there are 180 degrees in a triangle and you already have 90. The angle you just found needs to be less than a 90-degree angle. So that means B is equal to 180 minus 90 minus 16.26. So remember, all three of these angles, this one here is 90 degrees. This is 16.26. So when we type that in, 180 minus 90 minus 16.26, we get 73.74. So the measure of angle B is equal to 73.74 degrees. All right, let's do this second one together. So let's find the angle. This time we will use B. So from B, I know that across from the right angle is the hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent. So I have the opposite and the adjacent. That means I'm going to use tangent. I didn't circle A this time, I circled B. So tangent of B is equal to opposite 15 over 8. To get B alone, I just take tan negative 1, 15 over 8. I put this in my calculator. Second tan alpha y equals enter 15 over 8. I get 61.93. The last thing I need to do is find C. Or sorry, I have C. C is 90. I need to find A. So A is equal to 180 minus 90 minus 61.93. So to figure out A, 180 minus 90 minus 61.93. I get 28.07. So again, try number 3. We'll have a lot of practice on this. There's a lot of good videos to help you out along the way. Please come to class prepared with any questions you might have.